In our mini unit for chapter 4, we're going to be talking about graphing linear equations. So there's a lot of different things we're going to be talking about. The slope, y-intercept, slope-intercept form of a line, all these different kinds of things. So just to start with, we're just going to start with the basics of just graphing a linear equation by plugging in substitute numbers in into an equation. So a linear equation is an equation that forms a line when it's graphed. It's a straight line. A solution is an answer that makes an equation true. So sketch the graph of each line by making a table of values. Use the x values -3 to 3 in your table. So we want us to use -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, and 3. So what we do, these are our domain values, our input values. We substitute that into our equation, and we solve the equation, and we get our range or our output values in for y. So -3 times -3 is +9. 9 plus 4 is 13. Okay, and we actually won't be able to graph that one because 13 is off of our chart. So we'll go to the next one. -2 times -3 is +6. 6 plus 4 is 10. We can graph that one. We go -2, +10. That actually is right at the top of our chart. Also, we notice here the number is decreasing by 3. So we're subtracting by 3. And if we look at our coefficient, it's a -3. So -1 times -3 is a +3, plus 4 is 7. Again, it's a decrease by -3. So that coefficient there is telling us what we're going to go down by. So we can assume this is going to be 4, 1, -2, and -5. And you can check this. 2 times -3 is -6. -6 plus 4 is -2, and that's what we got for an answer. Now we're going to go ahead and graph the rest of our points. So we have -1, 7, which would fit right there. 0, 4 goes in right there. 1, 1. And 2, -2. 3, -5. Then I'll use my line tool to draw this line in. You want to try to make it as straight as you can because a linear equation is a straight line. But at the very end, don't forget to add your arrows to your line. This graph will continue forever. The only reason it's stopping is because we stopped putting points in. Any point on this line is a solution to this equation. It fits into the equation, and those two values would work. So let's take a look at what the line is doing. It's going down 3 and to the right 1. Well, right is positive, but down is negative. So down 3, because we always put our y change on top, our y change going down. So down 3 and right 1, so that's a -3 over 1. And you look at the coefficient is -3. So that kind of gives you your slope right there. You look at the other number is a +4. Well, look where it crosses the y-axis. It's not a coincidence that it crosses at +4. So this number here is also important. So these numbers that you're seeing actually are identifying some different things going on at the line, and those different things are going to be the things that we're working on in this mini unit where we're graphing linear equations and noticing what's going on with these numbers. So the coefficient is giving us our slope of our line, and this other number, this constant we call it, is giving us where it's crossing the y-axis. So as we look on to the next one, again, today's lesson, we're just basically plotting points and noticing some things with our equations. We can also see that from left to right, this graph is going down. Well, that's also signified by this negative in front. So look at the next equation. We don't have a negative here, so we can assume that this graph will be increasing from left to right. I'm noticing that the denominator is a 3, so because of that, I think I'm going to use multiples of 3 here in my equation. So I'm going to start with a -6. I'm going to go -3, 0, 3, 6, 9, and 12. And the reason I'm using multiples of 3 is just so when I divide by 3, I know I'm going to get a whole number of answers. So, for example, I'm going to use 2/3 times -6. I'm going to write that as -6 over 1, so I can multiply my fraction. I can simplify. This will be a 1. This will be a -2, and I divide by 3. So I'm going to get a 2 times -2, which is -4, and a 1 times 1. So that would be -4. And then I have to subtract 2. So I'm going to get a -6. And then when I do the same thing with a -3, I know my 3's are going to cancel, but it's still going to be negative. So I'm going to have -2 minus 2, which is -4. And then I'm putting a 0 in. 0 minus 2 is -2. And notice here my pattern is that I'm increasing by 2. So I know the next one's going to be 0, and then I'm going to go 2, 4, 6. Now, some of you might be looking at this, well, the last time it was increasing by -3, by -3, not increasing, but decreasing by 3. And that matched our coefficient. Well, if you look here, we're actually increasing by 2 every time here. But if you look over here, we're increasing by 3. And we always put y over x. And so in this case, we're increasing by 2, and we're increasing by 3. So the y's are increasing by 2, and the x's are increasing by 3, which is just 2/3. And look at what our coefficient is, and that's 2/3. So if we would have increased by 1 over here with our x values, then we would have seen a increase of 2/3 for each one. However, I didn't want to do that because I wanted to use a compatible number with the denominator 3. And so because I used a compatible number, we see the increase of 2/3, which is exactly what our coefficient is. The y is increasing by 2 and the x is increasing by 3. And we just have to understand that the y is always on top and the x is always on the bottom. Now we can go ahead and start graphing this. So -6, -6, -3, -4, 0, -2, 3, 0, 6, 2, 9, 4, and the last one's off the graph, so we won't have to graph that one. Then you draw in your line, and don't forget to put your arrows on the end because this graph will continue. And any point on that line is considered a solution. Now, if you take a look here at the graph, we're going up 2 over 3. So again, that's your y plus 2, and here's your x plus 3. So your y is going up 2, your x is going over 3. Again, that's your slope. We're not really paying attention to that today. All we're doing is filling in our tables and graphing our points. So again, I'm just trying to get us to notice some things going on. The slope being that it's 2/3 rise over run, plus 2 run 3, and y is always on top, x is always on the bottom. The change in y is over the change in x's. And then notice that other number. This is a -2 or a -2. Look where it crosses the y-axis. Again, it crosses at -2. This graph is increasing because we have a positive coefficient. So again, looking back here, we had a -3, so it was going down 1, 2, 3, and over 1. So that's a -3, +1. So there's your -3 over 1, which we wrote right over here as well. And again, it crossed at +4, and this was a +4. Here it's a -2, so it's going at -2, and it is increasing from left to right. We'll continue talking about slope and things like that in future lessons in our mini unit. Today, again, the main idea here is just to fill in our tables and graph our lines. I'd just like you to start noticing some of the similarities and coincidences that you can recognize from those graphs.